With a full off season of research and statting out players in the books, we present to you our final top 40 wide receiver rankings and tiers for the 2025 fantasy football season. We know your drafts are coming up. 40 players is a lot to cover those, so buckle up. We're going to dive on it. And fellas, just like any good old tier list, we're going to start our way at the top, work our way down. The three players we have in the S tier: Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson. We don't need to do a lot of explaining on this one. Maybe the question I'll ask on Jamar Chase, though, what is the likelihood we do get a repeat wide receiver one overall this year? The last time we saw it done was good old Antonio Brown. Was that almost 10 years ago already? It has been a minute since we've seen a wide receiver one overall repeat. So are we just like kind of being dumb by having him repeat as wide receiver one overall, or what's the justification here?
He probably is in the best position and one of the top three, probably one of the top two most talented wide receivers in the NFL. So when you put those two together, it's kind of like they have bad defense, great quarterback, going to throw the ball. It feels like everything's there. The only thing really stopping him is getting injured, which has been a big part of why we haven't seen a repeat. So we're not going to bank on the injury. That's why we have him at one.
I'm not sure if it's exactly going to look the same way as it did last year, where we're getting 175 targets, 1,700 yards, and 17 touchdowns. But there is room for regression, and Jamar can still finish as the wide receiver one.
Bad defense, high volume passing offense. That's about all you need to know with Jamar Chase. Though I will say, Ty, you bring up regression. I think there's a striking opportunity here for CeeDee Lamb, who, like, Cameron, let's be honest, you could really make the same case for CeeDee Lamb. It's pass heavy offense, bad defense, bad secondary. Micah Parsons still not on a contract for the Dallas Cowboys, or still not practicing for the Dallas Cowboys in the preseason here. And maybe the one thing you can add is that, holy cow, this running back room is pitiful.
Yeah, we saw it 2023. He had averaged 28 fantasy points per game over the back half of the season, albeit that was PPR fantasy points, but still lit the world on fire. They had George Pickens, but I don't think that caps his ceiling. I think, CD is one of those guys that it really doesn't matter who the other guy is. He's still going to get his. He's still going to, we've seen it with Jamar and T. So, yeah, I agree. We could see that positive regression, especially if Dak is 100% fully healthy from the get-go this year.
I don't want to provide too hot of a take as we make a transition here. But Ty, last time you and I did a ranking show, you mentioned that the gap between Justin Jefferson and the next wide receivers on this list, or at least one of the wide receivers on this list, isn't as far as people may think it is. Are you still of that opinion?
Yes, to a certain extent. I think it helps that Jefferson is healthy now, because when we did record, he was still kind of battling the hamstring injury. And the other thing is too, because the other receiver, there is some major changes in his offense as well, with recent news about his running back. So that offense is kind of in flux. So I think it's only natural to say that, like, maybe the gap has widened a little bit, but I'm still giving the other guy a really good shot.
Sure, and we'll touch on him momentarily. But again, with Justin Jefferson, you got Jordan Addison missing the first handful of games to start the season, right? Maybe, which is like a positive, but then also maybe becoming a much more balanced offense in terms of running the ball more. Justin Jefferson is kind of a unique one. It seems like it's a clear Jamar, CeeDee, Justin Jefferson with how the offseason has progressed. But that also brings us to the A tier. Ty, the player I know you were talking about, Nico Collins, right? We all are very, very in on Nico Collins. He's the wide receiver 4 for both you and me, Ty. Cameron, you have him as the wide receiver 5. But then you also have Brian Thomas Jr., Puka Nacua, Malik Neighbors, Amon-Ra St. Brown in this tier. Nico Collins, I mean, Ty, I'll just come right back to you. Wide receiver 1 overall potential, is he not?
He absolutely does. I mean, not only from a talent standpoint, but you just look at a very similar Dallas situation, maybe just with a much better defense than what Dallas has. But you look at this Houston offense, at least from week 1, without Joe Mixon, and likely without Joe Mixon for a good chunk of the beginning of the year, you have no option but to throw the ball, and you're gonna have to throw it to Nico Collins. So there is definitely the wide receiver 1 overall upside. And I think the usage kind of matches up with it this year, just getting a branch of the Sean McVay offense now with Nick Caley.
And this isn't the first time we've hyped up Nico Collins. Again, we talked about him in a previous wide receiver breakouts episode. We've talked about him in like a true brain busting upside level video. So if you want more fantasy football content, this is the place you're going to want to be this season. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell as well. We threw out there a lofty goal, fellas, 5K by the start of the season. I'm not quite sure if we're going to get there, but the people have been so supportive over the last week since we set that goal, right? So we hope that, yes, we want to provide you all the fantasy football insights possible to beat your league mates, but we also want to help remind you of the camaraderie and the fun and joy that fantasy football does bring the communities that we are a part of. It's how us three became as good of friends as we are. So we would appreciate it if you join us for the little journey we're on here creating fantasy football content for you all. Cameron, you have Brian Thomas Jr. ranked ahead of Nico Collins, yet he is 100% your guy for the season, just as Ty gave his piece on Nico Collins. I'll give you an opportunity to love on Brian Thomas Jr. here.
Yeah, we saw it last season. He was the wide receiver 4, obviously. Wasn't wide receiver 4 in points per game. He was wide receiver 12, but still 1,282 yards and double-digit touchdowns in his rookie season with Mac Jones playing, I think, 6 or 7 games last year. Yeah, I'm going to bet that with a better play caller, with a fully healthy Trevor Lawrence, and somebody else in the offense to take a little bit of pressure off of him, that he's going to take another step forward. That's really what it is. I think he's one of the most talented wide receivers in the NFL. I think he's in an offense that's going to be in a system that's going to be even better than last year. So for me, I'm just betting on another natural step forward for a guy going into his second year.
We have talked about the Jaguars offense quite a bit ad nauseum this off season. So if you want to hear how bullish we are on the Jaguars, how bullish I am on the Jaguars offense, maybe not as much for the likes of my co-host, but still players we absolutely like on the Jaguars offense this year. Again, plenty of videos on our profile for you to check out there. Between Puka Nacua, Malik Neighbors, Amon-Ra St. Brown, I feel like you can poke holes in each one. You could also make a strong case for each one to kind of be next in line behind Nico Collins and Brian Thomas Jr. here in our rankings, fellas. Ty, I'll start with you. How are you ranking the rest of the wide receivers in this tier?
I go Amon-Ra St. Brown, Malik Neighbors, and then Puka Nacua last.
Okay, so you have it reverse of what we have in our tier rankings. Cameron, where are you?
I have Puka, mystery wide receiver, Malik Neighbors, mystery wide receiver, Amon-Ra St. Brown. So,
interesting. So you got wide receivers weaved in and out.
2 of them, yes. So
okay, so I'll actually start with you then. Obviously with Puka Nacua, you've got the back stuff going on with Matthew Stafford. Renowned beat reporters down with the Los Angeles Rams. She does phenomenal work for them. A quality follow if you want Rams inside info. She was on Heed the Call, an Underdog production, and she had said she expects this back thing with Matthew Stafford to kind of just be a problem throughout the entirety of the season. It's progressing in the right direction, but it's going to hang around for a while. So why still Puka Nacua at the wide receiver 6 for you?
Because, obviously, if you're taking him, there's the risk. And so would I maybe slide him down a few spots? Sure. Right. This is just where the points comes out, assuming Matthew Stafford plays the whole season. But he's finished as the wide receiver 7 and the wide receiver 5 in points per game in his first 2 seasons. With Cooper Kupp last season, I brought up the stat a few times this offseason of there was that 6-game stretch before Cooper Kupp really fell off last year, where Puka was wide receiver 4 in points per game and Kupp was wide receiver 5. So they're in an offense. Sean McVay makes it so you can coexist with Devontae Adams there. And Puka's done that all with having less touchdowns in his both of his last 2 seasons than Justin Jefferson had just last year. So, he doesn't need those end zone targets, and he still just gets open, catches a ton of passes. I think even if Stafford was out, I still think he's a good enough wide receiver where he's going to be fantasy productive, and the bottom's just not going to fall out on him.
And it all depends on how competent you actually think Jimmy Garoppolo actually is as a quarterback. Can he be a facilitator, a game manager? Sure. Mm-hmm. Really don't want to see him throwing hospital balls to Devontae Adams anymore. But no. Sean McVay will get something out of Jimmy Garoppolo that will still keep Puka Nacua prevalent and relative in fantasy football this year. Though, Ty, I don't necessarily blame you for having him down at 8 in your rankings, but Amon-Ra St. Brown is still at 6 for you. Again, to poke the hole in here and ask you to address that. Look, no Ben Johnson anymore. It's a little bit of a mystery, not necessarily a mystery, but obviously we expect Amon-Ra to take a step back in that regard. But I also think it's a little bit silly to say like, hey, Amon-Ra St. Brown is really going to be impacted by this because he's just one of the most consistent contributors in the NFL.
Yeah, agreed. 3 straight years of 100+ catches. I don't think that automatically goes away just because you lost one of your you lost your play caller. I think Amon-Ra, St. Brown, and we've talked about Jahmyr Gibbs plenty. Those are going to be the two constants in this offense, and I'm willing to bet that the whatever regression that may hit, whether that's in targets, whether that's in touchdowns, whatever it is, I still have faith that Amon-Ra St. Brown is still going to be a focal point of this Detroit offense.
So we know Malik Neighbors is going to be the focal point of the New
Mhm.
York Giants offense for sure. The question is, how good is the quarterback play going to be? Now that we know, hey, Jackson Dart actually looked pretty good in preseason. We'll see how long Russell Wilson hangs in there. But how are we feeling about Malik Neighbors coming into this year? I know originally when we did our projections, we did a shocking projections episode all the way back at the start of July. I had said I had Malik Neighbors significantly lower than I anticipated. He has since come up in my projections, but like, is there that wide receiver 1 overall upside that Malik Neighbors has this year? Or like, what is a realistic outcome that we think is possible for Malik Neighbors this year, Cameron?
I think there is for sure. I think it really, for me, is just comes down to touchdowns. If Jackson Dart comes out and plays half the season, or if it is Russ the full season, and they're able to throw 25 plus touchdowns as a team, Malik Neighbors could hit 12. Right. That's how good of a talent he is. We know the volume's going to be there. The yardage is probably going to be there. So it really just comes down to touchdowns. And if he's able to get, double digits closer to 12, 13, then yeah, I think that is. Obviously, it's going to be a stretch on a team that we don't project to score a lot of touchdowns. And so that is, that's the worry. That's why he's this low. But it also feels like his floor is wide receiver 10, just because of the amount of volume he's going to get.
Where are you at, Ty?
I struggle with this one with Neighbors just because the bar was set incredibly high last year. And he finished second in targets with 170. The only guy with more than him was Jamar Chase.
Yeah.
And the big difference, 20 more receptions for Jamar Chase, 500 more yards receiving, and 10 more touchdowns. Like we talked about Jamar possibly regressing and not repeating those numbers, but that's an incredibly high bar that Malik Neighbors has to jump in order to finish as a wide receiver 1. I'm not sure you're going to be able to do that with Russell Wilson and Jackson Dart. So I still think that he's a really good floor play. Like, his floor is one of the highest when it comes to these receivers. But I also struggle with going like, can it really get that much better than what it was last year? Because I don't believe in this Giants offense to kind of, propel him to that level.
Yeah, I've seen people throw out there like, oh, just draft Malik Neighbors now. You'll thank yourself later because next year you'll be drafting him as the wide receiver 1 overall. And I just can't quite get behind that notion that Malik Neighbors is just going to catapult himself ahead of Jamar Chase and CeeDee Lamb. Again, barring any injuries this year. Could it be a conversation between him and Justin Jefferson next year? Yeah, potentially. But does it get higher than that? I don't know. I don't know for sure. So again, Russell Wilson and Jackson Dart are not Joe Burrow. I think we just kind of need to get that through our heads right now that, you know what, you're probably drafting like the wide receiver 3 to 4 at best this year at the wide receiver 7. And that's perfectly fine because Malik Neighbors is a really, really freaking talented football player that should be on your fantasy football teams this year. B tier, fellas, a smaller tier, but it truly, this is the tier where it's like, it's truly like the appetizer between the A tier and the C tier, because these guys are too good to be in the C tier, but they're just like not quite good enough to get into the A tier. So maybe what I'll have us do is I'll each have us talk about one of the players in this tier that we like best. And Cameron actually said this tier, by the way, gosh, read them off, Lucas. Service to audio listeners here. AJ Brown, Drake London, T. Higgins, Ladd McConkey in the B tier. AJ Brown. I'm bullish on AJ Brown, but Cameron, you're more bullish on Drake London. I was shocked in your projections to see you have Drake London as your wide receiver 7 this year.
Yeah, it really just comes down to the fact that he, had 100 receptions last season. He had 150 targets last year. He had 9 touchdowns. He had 1,200 yards. And quarterback play wasn't great for the Atlanta Falcons. And they haven't really changed anything as far as pass catchers go. So all I'm seeing is red zone targets are still going to be there. Deep targets are still going to be there. They're still going to use them in the same way, if not just more. And he's definitely a guy, big bodied, contested catch guy. That's usually a pretty good recipe for touchdowns. So for me, it's a bet on 8-9 might be the floor for Drake London this year as far as touchdowns go. Like he is one of those guys who could be pushing for, leading the league in touchdowns. I'm not saying he's going to, but that's the kind of archetype he is. Similar, he's not Mike Evans, but in the way of scoring touchdowns, the way Mike Evans does, that could be Drake London in this case.
I feel like your ranking of Drake London is a bet on Michael Penix.
Yep.
Turning into a top 15 quarterback in the league, probably.
Yeah, I would say.
Would you agree with that statement? I mean, you can fire back on that.
Personally for me, I think all he needs to be is top 20, right? Kirk Cousins last year was his quarterback, and he was, already had that stat line I just said. So I think anything better than Kirk Cousins, I think we could really see him take that step forward again. So I would say at least top 20, but yeah, probably borderline-ish top 15 quarterback.
Ty, if you got to pick one receiver to talk about here, which one is your preference?
I'll talk about Ladd McConkey on this one, just because it
Sure.
feels like we know exactly what we get with T. Higgins and AJ Brown, but Ladd McConkey is kind of the wild card here because no Rashawn Slater on this offensive line in LA. You get an improved run game with Amari and Hampton, and I'll leave Najee Harris out of that statement for now. But for Ladd, the guy averaged over 20 points per game in PPR over the last 8 games last year. So I think the ceiling may take a step backwards. The ceiling of 18, 19 fantasy points a game is probably more realistic. Just what I'm expecting to be an uptick in the run game usage with Amari and Hampton. But that being said, I'm not too scared off by the Keenan Allen signing. I think there's a world where they can both kind of coexist, even though a lot of people will say that they're both slot only players. It's not exactly true. I think offenses will get creative enough. This offense will get creative enough to get them on the field, to get them plenty of usage and volume. So Ladd McConkey, I think a lot of people are either just in because they love the name Ladd McConkey, or they're out because they're like, well, Keenan Allen and Rashawn Slater. I really think things are kind of relatively unchanged here for Ladd going into this year.
Yeah, I do think Ladd can mix inside and outside. I know we typically pigeonhole him to the slot. It's where he's most successful. It's where he can be most crafty with his route running. But you can shift Ladd to the outside. You can shift Keenan Allen to the outside if you need him to just be a sacrifice on the outside for you to keep Ladd open on the inside if you need to do that. So really shouldn't be any worries about Ladd, because I think you're right, Ty. I think we know who Ladd's going to be this year. People might have their questions on him, but just looking at the other wide receivers on this list, looking at the quality of quarterback that Justin Herbert is, Ladd McConkey is a perfectly fine pick this year. Like, you get to this tier and it doesn't feel as great to have one of these guys as your wide receiver 1, but there's only so many top 12 guys, right? Only 12 guys can be inside of the top 12. And so,
Really?
Really? I know.
Wow.
I just like, people are just like, oh, really? I don't feel good about having Ladd McConkey as my wide receiver 1. Well, it's either you have Bijan Robinson as your running back 1, and you're like, oh, I don't know if I feel good about having Josh Jacobs as my running back 1. I'm like, well, it's either one or the other, pal. Like, you either have that as your wide receiver 1 paired with a Bijan Robinson, or you have a Malik Neighbors paired with a Devon Achane. Like, you can't have both of these worlds where Ladd McConkey is a wide receiver 2 for you, and you get a Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs, one of the guys we talked about in our S tier on yesterday's show, if you want to check out our top 40 running back rankings there. Look, I love AJ Brown this year. I'll maybe just say a quick piece on him. T. Higgins is one of those where people will probably think this is too high, right? It comes out in our projections. Will T. Higgins get injured this year? The answer is most likely yes. We don't need to sit here and have a debate around T. Higgins and try and force people to fall in love with T. Higgins, but AJ Brown, look, my philosophy here is relatively simple, and I want at least one of you two to chime in here. If Philadelphia runs the ball less this year, I'm not saying they're going to run the ball infinitely less. They still have probably the best running back in the league behind probably the best offensive line in the league. They're going to run the football plenty still, but they're going to throw more. AJ Brown has just proven he is always the alpha in this offense, commanding just an elite target share. He's always the touchdown guy in the red zone if they're throwing the football. Big play waiting to happen as well. To me, we all have AJ Brown as our wide receiver 9. Personally, I feel fine if I have to resort to AJ Brown as my wide receiver 1 in fantasy football this year. If I scoop up we'll say a sliding Christian McCaffrey in the first round and I end up with AJ Brown in the second round as my wide receiver 1, Cameron, I'm feeling pretty good about that, honestly.
Yeah, they ran the ball so much, and like you said, they're not going to run the ball more this season. They're going to throw the ball more. They threw the ball 2 times less per game than Baltimore, who ran threw the second least amount. Buffalo was 28th in pass attempts. Philly threw the ball a full 5 times less per game than Buffalo did. So you just give them, right, they move back up to 28th in pass attempts this season, and all of a sudden that's 5 more targets go around. And AJ Brown was already the wide receiver 12 in points per game last year when, it was just no passing the ball. So I think you just give him a little bit even more opportunity, and we can just see him return to what he was pre-Saquon Barkley.
Now you can, if you want to get your quality reps in here, see what kind of combos of players you can get at the wide receiver position with the running back position. There's no better place to get your reps in than over at Underdog right now. It's real people competing against one another for real prizes in real time. It's not these ESPN draft lobbies where people get into them, then they bail and they take a kicker first overall, and then you're stuck with a pointless mock draft afterwards, right? Real people for real prizes, playing seriously. So if you want to hear how you can get involved, we'll take a break here. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog, home of Best Ball Mania 6. There are $15 million in prizes up for grabs, with $2 million going to first place and another $1 million going to second place. Entering is super easy. You join a draft with 11 other people, select your team, and Underdog will automatically generate your highest scoring lineup each week. Essentially, you get all the fun of drafting with zero stress of making the wrong decision on who to start. Underdog hosts a variety of other contests as well, ranging from $3 entries to $500 entries, so there's something for everybody's pocketbook. If you're not on Underdog yet, use the code FELLAS when you sign up, because they'll give you up to $1,000 in bonus credits to play with, and we'll give you our 2025 draft guide for free. Again, that's code FELLAS over on Underdog. Now let's get you back to the rest of the show. Alrighty, fellas, 12 wide receivers down, 28 to go. We are going to fly. C tier. It is massive. We've talked about a handful of these guys already, so we'll kind of jump around, pick our poison here. It's Jackson Smith and Jigba up top, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, Marvin Harrison Jr., DK Metcalf, Garrett Wilson, Mike Evans, Tedero McMillan, and Cortland Sutton wraps out the C tier. I actually want to start up top because I feel like we haven't talked about Jackson Smith and Jigba much this offseason. We've talked a lot about guys like Tyreek Hill and the volatility of the Miami Dolphins offense. We've talked about Marvin Harrison Jr., how it feels like a bet on him is a bet on Kyler Murray improving, a bet on them increasing their rapport this year. Talked about Garrett Wilson, how might just be more of a floor play, just going to get disgusting volume, but what is the volume going to equate to? Jackson Smith and Jigba goes in that range of wide receivers, yet he's the one that we probably talked about the least. I also have him ranked the highest out of all the players we mentioned as my wide receiver 13. Ty, I'll actually start with you on this one. Where do you kind of land on Jackson Smith and Jigba, and how do you think he kind of falls in the C tier here?
I think he is one of the leading candidates to finish at the top of this tier, just because what we saw last year was some very high-end production. And it feels like a lot of people just look at the Seattle offense, regardless of all the change, and they just go, well, JSN is the best player on this offense, and they're just, going to try to target him as much as they can, which sure, there's some merit to, but I feel like he's one of the riskier guys here because it is Sam Darnold without Kevin O'Connell. Like that has to matter at some point here. A shaky offensive line. So there's a lot of question marks, but at the same time, with that low floor comes the ability to, again, finish as a top 15 guy, because you look at Seattle and you just go, they're going to be throwing the ball. They're going to be trying to throw it to JSN. So the thing that stinks the most for JSN is just that, like, we're not getting a discount in your home leagues on his situation, like he's already being priced as a top 15 guy. So sure, you could look at him and go, maybe he's not a guy I really want to target in drafts, even though like we have him, you and I have him ranked, I should say, Lucas, as a top 15 guy already. I think there's a lot of uncertainty that comes with JSN, and yet at the same time there is a good amount of certainty. So maybe I'm talking myself in circles and making this way more confusing than it is, but I ultimately land that like JSN is really just a fine player. And for anyone that goes overboard and says that like he's going to be a bust and that he's not worth targeting, I think is kind of missing the point and just kind of overgeneralizing the Seattle situation.
Cameron, I do want to come to you because as Ty was talking, I admittedly had a moment of like, am I being a hypocrite by being in on Jackson Smith and Jigba, but willing to kind of price Garrett Wilson down? Like, is it kind of, is it,
go.
look, I'm not saying like, I'm not saying I'm bringing Garrett Wilson back up. It's more so of a, okay, but why am I more in on Jackson Smith and Jigba with what I think is just going to kind of be a volume sponge? I'm just not as sold on Cooper Kupp. I'm not as sold on, Torrey Horton just being this. I love Torrey Horton, but I don't think he's going to siphon from JSN outright. But at the end of the day, like between JSN and Garrett Wilson, the case is they're going to be volume sponges. So is there that big of a difference between these two guys?
I personally don't think so. Garrett Wilson moved down slightly in my rankings over the past couple of days, but to be fair, the difference between wide receiver 12 and wide receiver 17 for me is less than a touchdown. So that's what it comes down to of why he slid down. But you look at last year, JSN wide receiver 11 and half PPR, Garrett Wilson wide receiver 12, and then you look at points per game. JSN wide receiver 21 in points per game. Garrett Wilson wide receiver 22 in points per game. The case for JSN over Garrett Wilson is hopefully Seattle throws the ball more because the Jets just aren't. Hopefully Sam Darnold, it doesn't just become a shell of himself when he doesn't have Kevin O'Connell and a better offensive line. Because if Sam Darnold puts up a season that was 80% of what we saw last year, then yes, that is the case then for JSN, because that is going to be better than whatever Justin Fields puts out from a passing perspective. However, for Garrett Wilson, like he legitimately could have a 40% target share because they just don't have anyone to throw the ball to. You can say whatever you want about Cooper Kupp and Torrey Horton, but they are significantly better than the wide receiver 2 on the Jets right now. So that's why I'm okay with both. I just don't think, like you said, I don't think they're cracking the top 12, honestly. Like, unless one of these guys gets hurt ahead of them, I really don't. But I think they could easily finish wide receiver 13, wide receiver 14. It's just they don't have that great upside because I just don't see the touchdown upside, and I just don't see the yards per reception being anything higher than like 12.2.
Which, I mean, that's what it feels like for all the wide receivers in this range. Is like, yeah, you all have like top 15, but you don't have top 12 upside, right? The difference that I do have for JSN and Garrett Wilson is that I do have JSN catching more touchdowns than Garrett Wilson this year. I do think that'll be the thing that probably separates these two to maybe put a bow on that question. Already talked about Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams. It's a lot of the same conversation that we had with Puka Nacua. Is Matthew Stafford going to be healthy? He's playing behind Puka Nacua. So factor that into your Devontae Adams rankings however you want. Ty, you and I talked about Marv on a video we did last week, potential league losers. Cameron, okay, I will let you get your word in here. I was going to skip over this since Ty and I talked about him, but you can go back and watch the league losing downside video that Ty and I did. But you disagree with pretty much almost every player we talked about in that video, Cameron. So I will give you a chance to say your piece here on Marv.
Yeah, I think you guys talked about Tyreek as well, which I do admit, to be honest, I am coming more down just because like vibes are getting so incredibly bad. I do think if there is anybody that could finish as a top 5 wide receiver in this tier, it is Tyreek, because if he comes back out and is like, hey, I'm not washed.
Top 5's aggressive. Oh boy.
He back-to-back 1,700-yard seasons before last year. Like, I'm just saying, if it was the injury last year and he still is Tyreek, you can't tell me that it's same as CMC. It is the same as CMC, but I digress. To Marvin Harrison. For me, the bet on Marv is the bet on the talent. It's a bet on the fact that he was one of these wide receivers that we were almost putting in generational prospect. And it's the bet on, hey, he's going to take this next step forward. Last year, they kind of pigeonholed him to this spot. This year, he's going to be more developed. Another offseason, coaching staff trusts him a little bit more. For me, that's the bet. I understand the downside of, nope, he's still going to be pigeonholed there. He still has Kyler Murray. He still has Trey McBride ahead of him. But I'm taking the bet on this guy is extremely talented. It was disappointing last year. He still had 885 yards and 8 touchdowns. So I think he can continue to progress as a wide receiver.
Do you want to go back to Tyreek Hill, Ty? You really wanted to jump in there before Cam went up, but put on to Marv. Very, very conveniently transitioned to Marv. It didn't leave any space.
Ty's convinced that Tyreek, he is no more. So.
Well, I to add to maybe not set up Ty. I also don't think it was just the injury for Tyreek last year. I think it was the fact that their offensive line was just so putrid that it was difficult to get anybody on the perimeter involved.
6 games, I think that's probably the biggest thing.
That's also one of the biggest things too. But Go ahead, Ty. You can fire back your Tyreek point. We'll move on to another wide receiver in this year.
I don't want to say this to generalize. Actually, no, I am really actually just trying to generalize this. I don't think any of the guys in this tier have top 5 upside. And I think that's why they are in this kind of 4th C tier, is that we recognize that they are likely going to be the wide receiver ones or in high volume offenses. So like Devontae Adams, that they are still going to be higher in our rankings, but the upside is not the same as the tier above in that B tier with AJ Brown, Drake London, T Higgins, and Ladd McConkey. So maybe we could just move on to the D tier because I pretty much summed it all up. I'm kidding. But I think that's when you back to the Tyreek point. There can still be a good player where he can still finish between 7 and 15. But I think a lot of people look at Tyreek Hill, not saying you are, Cam. A lot of people just hear the name Tyreek Hill and they're like, dude, wait, what? I'm getting him in the 3rd round and he could be the wide receiver 1 overall. Those days are over, in my opinion.
I don't know if that's what people are thinking. I think more people think Tyreek Hill is just washed after last year.
It's one of two things. Either it's one extreme of this will win me my league, and the other of he's completely washed and he's not really Tyreek Hill anymore.
And I'm just like the answer's in the middle. That's what I've come to the conclusion to. Tyreek Hill's probably usually the wide receiver 14 this year.
Which is usually how it works out. It's always usually right down the middle. It's never the extremes.
Well, let's keep moving down this tier because we got so many more other players to cover outside of this tier too. Look, DeKalon Zacharias Metcalf. All right, the full government name is coming up because it's actually a really sick name. It's a shame he has to go by DK, but again, it's a mouthful too to say at the same time. He finds his way into this the middle of this tier. And I don't think that's a popular opinion. But I don't know. Can we just say it's not all that different than Garrett Wilson? Either just got to get on with our lives because what is the case for DK Metcalf? He's the only guy in Pittsburgh, unless you really, really like Jonnu Smith, Calvin Austin, or Roman Wilson. I don't think they're going to siphon a ton of targets from a $33 million per year player like DK Metcalf. I think the question you have to ask, though, is how often does this team find themselves in the red zone under Aaron Rodgers? And does Aaron Rodgers have any gas left in the tank, Cameron?
Yeah, I'm always surprised when I look at last year and I realize Aaron Rodgers did have 28 passing touchdowns. He did find the end zone on a gross Jets team. So I do think that can happen. Like you said, they paid him insane money to pay DK Metcalf, so they're going to throw him the ball pretty consistently. We know how good he can be for fantasy in a season. So yeah, I would agree. I think that's probably why he belongs here, except we've seen him finish top 8 already in a year, obviously with prime Russell Wilson in a very different system, but we've seen it from him before, and now he's truly paid like a guy to be up there. I guess Garrett Wilson's paid like that too. So yeah, you're right. Garrett Wilson's a good comp for fantasy for DK Metcalf. Good work.
I do my best around here to just keep the show afloat. That's all I'm really trying to do here. Ty, looks like you wanted to add something.
I think it's important to just clarify. We're not saying that DK Metcalf is going to walk in and get 140 targets this year, but he's going to get the
might
touchdowns
be.
that you want Garrett Wilson to get, but Garrett Wilson's going to get the volume that you want DK Metcalf to get.
You don't have DK Metcalf started out for 140 targets?
I have him at 128.
Where are you
Really?
at, Cameron?
190? No, 134. I'm actually not that far away from Ty. Sorry.
Really?
Sorry about it.
Okay, so maybe I need to siphon a few more away from DK then, because
Yes.
I have DK at 139.
See, but here, I mean, I can see that happening just because, again, if it's not DK Metcalf, who is it going to be in Pittsburgh?
27% target
Smith.
share. That's what I have. That's what I have him
Smith.
for.
John Smith.
Which I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe it is Jonnu Smith. Maybe I need to filter another percent over to half to Roman Wilson, half to Calvin Austin. I just don't know, right? Like I don't.
Yeah.
Part of me is like I just look at it. I'm like, why? Well, why wouldn't DK just earn a crap ton more targets than literally everybody
then
else?
you
That's how
remember
it's worked for
targets.
Aaron Rodgers when he's only had a Devontae Adams in the past, right? Like I don't know. So it'll be interesting to see how DK Metcalf shakes out with the Pittsburgh Steelers. We asked if Aaron Rodgers has any gas left in the tank. Look, Mike Evans only getting older by the year, but it's another 1,000-yard season for Mike Evans last year. Could potentially be another season with double-digit touchdowns for him as well. How much gas do you think is left in the tank, Cam?
I think it's probably about the same amount of gas that was left last year. They're going to need him with Godwin being hurt, right? Igbuka, with as promising as you think he's going to be, he's still going to be a rookie. And then McMillan obviously being hurt. So even if he doesn't have gas in the tank, they're going to throw him the ball and he's going to score touchdowns. And that's really all you care about when it comes to Mike Evans.
If you want to know how much I love Tedero McMillan, you can go watch our wide receivers the draft before they break out video. We covered him in that video. I believe we covered him in another video within the last 2 weeks as well. I can't remember which one it is off the top of my head, but I will say after my latest tweaks to the draft guide, I am absurdly high on Tedero McMillan, much more so than Cameron, who apparently hates Tedero McMillan. I won't have you defend your ranking, Cameron, because I think you and I would just scream at each other and not come to any helpful conclusion. I'll just say you and I are 12 spots apart on Tedero McMillan, and we'll just leave it at that. And the people can decide whether they want to favor with me, who's extremely bullish on Tedero McMillan, or you, where you have your reservations on Ted McMillan. Go ahead. Yes, sir. You can answer after you politely raised your hand on a podcast to insert your thoughts.
My reservation is more on Bryce Young and the Carolina offense than it is on Tedero McMillan. That's all. That's all I want to say to justify having him lower. I'm all in on Ted. I just am lower on Bryce Young and the step forward.
He says I'm all in, and he has him outside of the top 25 receivers.
Yes, because I think that's as good as Bryce Young's going to let him be. That's where I'm at.
Oh, I so badly want to ask you a Garrett Wilson based question right now with Justin Fields, but we don't have time to get into this argument.
Garrett Wilson's paid $30 million a year. That's he's proved that he can handle this.
Get Tedero McMillan 4 years into the league. He'll be making
exactly. Get him 4 years, and then he'll be a better wide receiver. There we go. I'm glad we're on the same page. All right, go to Ty.
Not what was implied at all. Ty, I'm going to pivot out of this so we can talk about why Cortland Sutton is at the end of this tier. This is a tier clearly we could sit in and discuss all day. I mean, we're like 15 minutes into this tier, and we got so many other players to cover, man. But Cortland Sutton cracks this tier. Correct choice, or is he kind of like the odd duck out here?
I feel like people are going to look at him as the odd man out here, but I really don't understand the hate for Cortland Sutton this year. It feels like a lot of people are just like, oh, it's Cortland Sutton. He doesn't get a lot of volume, and he's in Denver. Maybe it's just me being more bullish on this Denver offense, but 135 targets, 8 touchdowns last year for Cortland Sutton, wide receiver 24 in points per game. I feel like there's room to get better. It may not be statistically, but maybe we get 2 more touchdowns and then he kind of pushes closer to 20. And I mean, where he's our wide receiver 21, that's certainly where that's certainly within the range of outcomes, especially in this Denver offense.
I feel like people are finally starting to come back around on Cortland Sutton though, when they recognize like, oh, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have been ranking Cortland Sutton as like my wide receiver 26. Maybe he does belong closer to like the top 20 conversation because Bo Nix is an ascending quarterback in the NFL. If you get him a little bit of help underneath, could open up things over the top for Cortland Sutton as well. And like, I'm sorry, I'm not convinced Marvin Mims. I'm not convinced Troy Franklin. I'm not convinced Pat Bryant. They traded away Devon Vele. Like, again, just kind of one of those guys where I look around and I'm like, okay, it's Evan Ingram, but like in terms of wide receiver, who else is it? So maybe we end up just calling this tier old heads in volume. That's kind of where I'm at with this tier. Yeah, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, Mike Evans as your old heads, and then everyone else is just kind of a bet on volume within their offenses. So that's how we'll close out that tier, is giving it that wonderful title of vets and old heads, or vets and old heads, volume and old heads. Excuse me, vets and old heads, basically the exact same thing. The D tier, oh brother. Where do we even want to begin in this D tier? I'll start by reading the names off, and then Cameron, I'll have you pick a player to start with, and probably not the first two guys on this list, Jameson Williams and Calvin Ridley, because we've talked about them on recent episodes. I know you love talking about them. But it goes Jameson Williams, Calvin Ridley, Terry McLaurin, George Pickens, Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, Rome Odunze, Xavier Worthy, Matthew Golden, DJ Moore, Chris Olave. Hefty tier. Hefty tier. Could maybe make a case that it could be cut off after a guy like Xavier Worthy, or if you want to move Xavier Worthy down a tier, like there's a lot of different ways you can slice this tier up to add another one. But Kim, where do you want to start with? Maybe, you know what? I know I said I'd give you a choice. Maybe we want to start with the guy, Terry McLaurin, who just got paid $32 million a year by the Washington Commanders. Ty and I talked about him as a guy with league losing downside, because the downside was if he's serious about holding out, he'll hold out into the season. People said if you're really not drafting him because of a holdout, I'm not saying I wasn't drafting him because of a holdout. I gave other reasons as well, but I don't know, man. This is a guy where I think people will see Terry in this tier and they might actually think he belongs in the tier above. I'm kind of okay with him being in this tier. Like, I don't have a massive issue with it. I get I'm a little bit subjective because it's my rankings, but or our rankings, our consensus rankings. But I don't know, where do you land on Terry McLaurin now that he's gotten paid?
Yeah, you were going to give me an option. I was really excited. I had the guy I want to talk about, and then you gave me one of the guys I didn't want to talk about. So thank you for that. I'm very, very thankful.
You're very welcome. It's what you get for just shutting me down on Tet McMillan and just assuming we're on the same page. We were not on the same page. So rug pull for you, good sir.
So Terry last year, right? 13 touchdowns. Awesome. Fantastic. He was still the wide receiver 15 in points per game in half PPR formats. I think that's really what it comes down to. Do you expect him to score 13 again when he, let me see. Let me read you these touchdown totals from Terry McLaurin. 7, 4, 5, 5, 4, 13. Okay. Let's take away 4 a year for bad quarterback play. That still would have put him at like 11, 8, 9, 9, 8, which is still good. But, you take that even further down and it just gets worse. Like, I don't know. I worry that if he is an 8 touchdown guy next season, which definitely could happen if Jane Daniels, has even a minor sophomore slump, or even if he's just the same Jaden Daniels from passing perspective next year, right? We could easily see Terry come back to 8 touchdowns, and you drop Terry down 8 touchdowns, and all of a sudden we're talking about him as the wide receiver 20 in points per game, which is still fantastic. But it's like, if that's a ceiling for him this next year, that's where I get a little worried. Let me pull up my rankings just so I can make sure I'm saying the right thing. I have him as wide receiver 20, so that's exactly where I think he should be. Maybe you could put him in the tier above. I don't hate it in either spot. I think there's the argument both ways.
Well, and you bring in Deebo Samuel as well. Last year, it's Terry running out there with Noah Brown. Was Olamide Zacchaeus still with the Washington Commanders last year? He's run again, a guy where it's just like, who's he out there running with? He's running with old head Zach Ertz out there, and now they bring in a Deebo Samuel for him to run alongside, right? So Deebo's going to get some touches as well. Probably siphon a couple of touchdowns away from Terry McLaurin. So if you're expecting regression there, you're expecting Deebo to take 1 or 2 of those away from Terry McLaurin along with getting his own. You're just looking at a guy where it's like, yeah, you might just kind of top out at wide receiver 18 this year. And where do I have him? I mean, I have him as a wide receiver 23. I feel pretty good about that. Ty, I mean, we both piled on to Terry McLaurin last week in terms of where he's at. I mean, you have him very, very low in your rankings, but we got a lot of other players. Okay. So now Cam noticed. So now we can't
wide
move
receiver
past it, Cameron.
29.
Now we can't move past it.
I'm
not saying I'm trying to hide anything here. I'm just saying we got so many wide receivers to cover with limited time left here. But
I mean, dude, almost
now we have to talk. Now we have to open this can of worms.
Whoa, you said, hey, come on now. Come on now. Because Khalil Shakir's my wide receiver 42. Okay. Just slow the roll on that one. Okay. My thing with Terry McLaurin. Do you guys know how many days apart he signed his contract from Brandon Ayuk when he signed his extension? I am. I'm not going copy and paste that Brandon Ayuk was a wide receiver 55 in points per game before he got hurt. I don't think that's going to happen.
There's something to be said about missing training camp, though. Yeah.
Right. There's a slow start that is going to happen. So in the second half of the year, can we see a top 24, top 20 Terry McLaurin? Totally. But because of the slow start, it's going to impact his overall finish. That's where I sit with wide receiver 29.
Sure, which I can understand that. Because well, okay, go ahead. Give me how many days apart was it from Brandon Ayuk?
4 days.
So
Ayuk was August 29th and Terry was August 25th.
So, missing a substantial amount of training camp time to get in shape with the rest of his teammates, get in rapport, they're build upon his rapport with Jane Daniels. Yeah, it's not great vibes from Terry McLaurin. So since we let Ty interject there at the end of that, Cameron, I will come back to you. I'll give you a choice of player that you want to talk about here because I'm a generous host.
Devonta Smith. And I fear...
Oh, not the league winner.
I just talked about Jalen Waddle and
go check out that video. Go check out that video.
Yes, I stand by it. Yeah, people were giving me crap in the comments. I stand by that. I think
the people stand by Ty and I for saying
if you think Tyreek could be dust, Jalen Waddle will be just fine because Tua was good when he was healthy.
Dust, though. I never said that.
But
Tua, you start talking about Devonta.
Tua is still good when he's healthy. Anyways, Devonta Smith. Last 3 seasons, wide receiver 15 points per game, wide receiver 21 points per game, wide receiver 17 points per game. I fear that we have him too low because he's an unsexy name, because he's an unsexy player on a very unsexy passing offense who already has an alpha. But Devonta Smith, I would make the case as a top 20 NFL wide receiver pretty easily for me. And I think if the Eagles just throw the ball a little bit more, which I'm projecting they do, I think that he probably is going to end up being too low in our rankings. I still have him as wide receiver 26, but
you're the lowest out of the 3 of us.
But to be fair, he's 10 points away from Terry McLaurin, who's my wide receiver 20 or wide receiver 20. So, it could shake up pretty quickly going anyway. That's the issue with the wide receivers right here is it's just so congested. I mean, we could almost even mix C and D together just because it's like truly just giant flat tier of wide receivers. I do think we did it right. I think there was a little bit of a break, but yeah, Devonta Smith, he's fantastic. Jalen Hurts likes to find him, and he's surprisingly pretty good at scoring touchdowns. I mean, he's got like 7, 8 touchdowns the last 3 years, so it's like you worry, maybe he won't get a lot, but he does. So I really like Devonta Smith. I think this is probably a floor for him, floor spot.
Yeah, I like the call out on Devonta Smith there because it's a guy where it's like I don't know if I'm going to get top 20, borderline top 15 numbers for him. But I also know he's not going to finish lower than like the wide receiver 30 this year. So if you just want a true wide receiver 25 click, it's probably Devonta Smith. And he's probably going to outperform that come end of season rather than just be stuck at wide receiver 25 or like fall well below that. So yeah, I like to call it on Devonta Smith there on that one. I'm going to save the people from more Rome Odunze, Matthew Golden talk on our end here. If you want a league winners video, if you want a wide receiver upside video, if you want a wide receiver breakout video, literally Rome Odunze is in every single one of those. I think I've talked about Rome Odunze more than any other player. I've drafted Rome Odunze more than any other player this offseason. So if you want to hear about Rome Odunze, literally click on any video that has the word wide receiver in the title. And Rome Odunze will likely be in that video. So We'll skip over Rome Odunze. I want to talk about Xavier Worthy because I think people will probably have him higher with all the uncertainty around the Rashee Rice suspension. To me, when Rashee Rice isn't on the field, Xavier Worthy is going to be a great top 20 play. When you have Rashee Rice on the field, I question if it's going to be like a top 25 Xavier Worthy or okay, so maybe actually here's what I'll do. I'll play the game with Rashee Rice on the field. On a weekly average, does Xavier Worthy finish higher or lower than the wide receiver 26?
I'm going to say lower because that's what I've projected. But I will preface with Xavier Worthy to me feels like the guy I could be most wrong on. Just because the teams are saying that they want to work on down the field passing. If that comes to fruition, we could look like idiots. But where I haven't projected, yes, I will say he finishes slightly outside wide receiver 26.
Are you in the same bow tie?
Yep.
With Rashee Rice on the field.
Yeah, we are paddling the same boat here.
Because and the reason why I say with Rashee Rice on the field is because I think should Rashee Rice get suspended, when that suspension comes through, I think you could get Xavier Worthy back in that manufactured touch role that we saw him in the playoffs that he was actually succeeding in. And if they do start hitting on more of these downfield passes, brother, we could easily be looking at a top 15 Xavier Worthy, right? So that's why I say with Rashee Rice on the field, it's another person to siphon targets. And hey, you know what? Can we take a moment just to say congratulations to the newly engaged couple on the Kansas City Chiefs?
Oh, jeez.
Best shape of his life, Travis Kelce. You know he's gearing up for the wedding and engagement photos, but brother, you know that's going to pay off dividends on the football field. You already know. I can't play the bit anymore. I can't play the bit. I can't take it seriously.
You definitely went for it.
I went for it. A lot of people clicked away on this video by now. That's okay. Yeah, Xavier Worthy is a fascinating one because I agree. I think that's maybe a good way to put it for Xavier Worthy, Cameron, is he's probably the guy we could look most wrong about. And it's like he actually should be in that C tier because he has not a volume play, but he could upside an efficiency his way to being in that C tier top 20 range of players.
Might be a better in best ball kind of guy.
Better in best ball kind of a guy. I don't hate that at all. Yeah, Xavier Worthy might be a little bit more of a headache on your redraft teams than people may want him to be, which I get. Matthew Golden, not quite the same boat as Rome Odunze, but if it has wide receiver in the title of the video, there's probably an 80% chance we talked about Matthew Golden in that video, a guy that we all love. Are you waiting to jump in here with a player you really want to talk about, Cameron? You're like on the edge of your seat waiting to share something.
I'm on the edge of my seat watching Ty. He wanted to jump back in. His face of disappointment when he moved on.
This is almost a callback to when you talked about Rome Odunze for 2 extra minutes and didn't give Cam a chance to talk.
2 extra minutes for Matthew Golden. Go. I'll kick up my feet.
I think he wanted Worthy.
I wanted Worthy because I
don't
want to
talk about Xavier Worthy. Then my feet are up.
Because I don't want to talk about the 2 guys at the end of this tier because it's just
I don't either.
Gross. So with Worthy, he feels like the guy that we can be the most wrong about. I'm worried. You look like you are enjoying your time in the background there, sir.
2.5 minutes, just like my Rome Odunze bit. I'm just giving it back to you.
I'm worried that yes, if Rashee Rice when he's suspended, it's going to be really easy for people just to go, we're going to keep the deep ball stuff and we're going to keep the manufacturer stuff. I'm not sure that we're going to get both of those without Rashee Rice. I feel like one is going to get sacrificed for the other. And so that doesn't necessarily, yes, it does catapult the ceiling into being the top 20 guy, but I still think it keeps the floor relatively low. So people may criticize the ranking that we have, but I feel like there's still a wide range of outcomes, no matter how the season plays out in terms of the wide receivers around him.
All right, we can cut to Matthew Golden, even though again, I would encourage people to just go check out any other wide receiver video or breakout video we've done on Matthew Golden. We've talked about DJ Moore kind of in pairing with Rome Odunze recently, and then Chris Olave, we talked about as an unsexy pick. For the sake of time, I do want to move us to the last tier because there are a few names I want to make sure we touch on. Jerry Jeudy with Joe Flacco as the starter. Travis Hunter, Stephon Diggs, Jacoby Myers, Slick Rick Pearsall, Jaden Reed, Zay Flowers. This is where Zay Flowers falls, everybody. You can see we despise Zay Flowers, wide receiver 39 in our projections. And then Emeka Egbuka wraps out our top 40. Look, a lot of names we could cover here. I just wanted a quick question on Jerry Jeudy. Joe Flacco is the starter. Level of confidence in Jerry Jeudy now that you know there's a gunslinger at quarterback. 0 to 10. 0 being like Jerry Jeudy is a waste of a pick, 10 being top 10 like he was last year.
5. It's a Brown. I don't know how long Joe Flacco ends up playing this season. If he plays a full season, then yes, but I'm not guaranteed that. So I'm going to say 5.
I would say 4. Just I don't know if I can call Joe Flacco a gunslinger at this point.
Well, a more proficient passer maybe than Dylan Gabriel or Shadur Sanders.
I feel like maybe it's just me being
a more experienced passer.
Well, sure, more experienced.
I'm going to keep downgrading that adjective
until we call him a Super Bowl champ or something like that.
Yeah, right.
Elite quarterback Joe Flacco.
Yeah.
It's just not Jameis Winston. So I'm not exactly sure the passing volume is exactly going to reach the heights that we saw at last year because, again, it is a Joe Flacco at quarterback and not a Jameis Winston.
Mm-hmm. Travis Hunter, we've talked about. By the way, I'm sitting around like a 4 on Jerry Jeudy as well. I think I'm like more willing to click him now that I know Joe Flacco is the quarterback, but I have the same thought. For how long are we going to get a good Jerry Jeudy on our fantasy football teams if Dylan Gabriel is the one who steps in after Joe Flacco? Travis Hunter, look, say what you want about Travis Hunter. I'm bullish on him. His talent is undeniable. The Jaguars trade up to 2nd overall to get him. You don't do that if you don't want to score more touchdowns, right? Liam Cohen led Baker Mayfield to 41 passing touchdowns last year. I'm not saying Trevor Lawrence is a 41 passing touchdown quarterback, but what I am saying is this team is going to be scoring the ball more often. You need to get the ball in the scoring position in order to do that. Travis Hunter is going to be a part of this offense to help them do so. Oh, do we want to say anything about Stephon Diggs? Do you all have anything like convincing you want to share on Stephon Diggs? I'm just kind of like coming off of an injury. His recovery is progressing well. I don't know how much like gas he has left in the tank. I'm big Kyle Williams slappy. Probably my 5th most drafted player on Underdog. I really like Kyle Williams, but that's not to say Stephon Diggs isn't going to be the wide receiver 1 for Drake May here.
Yeah, I think we forget he was still pretty good last year before he got hurt. He was still averaging over 8 receptions a game, or 8 targets a game. Obviously, it's just how fast does he come back? That's what keeps him down this low. I think if he is the true wide receiver 1 and is healthy right away, I think we could move him up a tier.
Jacoby Myers requested a trade this week. Does he get traded?
Yeah. He wants a contract, so I would think if he goes anywhere, it's going to be someone that needs a wide receiver. So for me,
what kind of a contract is he going to field? It's not a $30 million Terry McLaurin contract. That's the part that I'm just kind of sitting on too.
Crazy money out there. So I mean, it should be at least decent. It'd probably be more than everybody thinks it should be because it's a wide receiver contract. But
all right, we don't need to sit here and crunch wide receiver contract numbers, but more of a like, is there a team out there that's desperate enough to trade for Jacoby Myers and actually pay him the money that he's probably looking for after seeing what Terry McLaurin just got? Like, I don't know. I can't pinpoint what team that is desperate enough to go out and pay Jacoby Myers the level of money he's probably asking for in a trade. Yeah. Are you in the same boat there, Ty? I just don't know that team.
I'm with you there too. And I also think the other part of this is I don't know if he's exactly going to find a better like fantasy situation than where he is with Vegas right now. Like if he finds himself in a better offense, he's going to be at best the wide receiver 2. And I just don't know of many better offenses that he can land in where he can be that wide receiver 2. So I feel like Jacoby Myers, no matter what happens, is just going to be kind of stuck at this like low end wide receiver 3 play.
And which is fine. I think that's what Jacoby Myers is probably going to end up being anyways. As much as we like Geno Smith as an upgrade at quarterback, Jacoby Myers could give you wide receiver 25 finish this year, but most weeks you're probably going to feel most comfortable starting him in your flex spot. Slicky Ricky Pearsall.
You got
I need an update on Jawan Jennings before I bring Slick Rick up as high as you have him, Ty. I like the talent. I like the fit within the 49ers offense. I don't want to say I like the health of the other wide receivers around him because Ricky Pearsall is like the only healthy wide receiver right now, healthy, if you want to say he's done dealing with a hamstring injury. But I need an update on Jawan Jennings before I'm ready to push him there because I'm a Jawan Jennings guy. Yes, brother, go for it.
Don't forget about the deal in the trade request too with him.
The deal, yes, for Jawan Jennings.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So there's a lot besides the injury aspect of this.
Right. So this could be like the culmination of all the things that have kind of been going on with Jawan Jennings this offseason boiling up. My guess is that if we don't get anything by the end of this week in my final rankings for the draft guide, my guess is that I probably get Ricky Pearsall inside of my top 35. If I had to guess.
No practice yet for Jennings either.
Sure. So come Friday, my guess is that I'm probably going to have Ricky Pearsall inside of my top 35. I want to end. We talk Jaden Reed, Zay Flowers are just not fun picks, relatively low upside picks. We've talked a lot about Zay Flowers. If you want to go watch any of our videos where we talk about players that we don't like drafting, Zay Flowers is probably in that video. Emeka Egbuka, though, cracks the top 40. Cameron, your ranking is a little bit surprising for me on Emeka Egbuka. I have him at 38. Ty has him at 35. You've got Emeka Egbuka outside of your top 40. You have him at 45. What's your primary reason for that? Because for me, the vibes are terrible on Chris Godwin. It wouldn't surprise me if Emeka Egbuka comes out as the wide receiver 2 for this offense and only cedes to like a 2B to Chris Godwin.
Yeah, and I think that's honestly where I have him, but I just think Godwin's going to split enough with Egbuka down the road when he does get back, even if that's like week 8 on, that we're just not going to see the true explosion. I have him starting out a little slower just because he is a rookie. I don't have him jumping right in and being fully, in the offense, fully getting where he's at. And then I think when he finally starts hitting that stride, Godwin is going to come back and they have enough invested in him that he is going to play a decent amount. So that's where it comes from. I still think he's a fine pick where you're getting him. I just think it's, well, I guess actually now he's shooting up boards crazy, but
he's wide receiver 35 where Ty has him on most draft boards now.
Yeah. So I guess not anymore, but I don't know. I just have it capped. I understand the excitement. I just don't know if it's going to quite be there because I think Godwin's going to factor in enough in this offense later in the season.
So my counterpunch to that is like you're going to give Emeka Egbuka 6 weeks of ramp up by the time Chris Godwin is back. Mm-hmm. Like it's going to be tough to look back when Emeka Egbuka is starting to hit that second half of the season rookie bump, and you're looking at him and you're like, man, I don't know if we can actually keep him off the field. Like I'm not saying Chris Godwin's going to come out and absolutely look like a shell of himself, but coming off another lower body injury, the vibes have been, he's not coming back till October. I just I don't know where you sit. You're more bullish than even I am. And I thought I was doing pretty good having him at wide receiver 38, but part of me is like, by the time you get Godwin back, Emeka Egbuka could be undeniable as the wide receiver 2 in this offense.
Yeah. Egbuka, throughout the entire offseason and really up until this point, I just had to remind myself of why we liked Emeka Egbuka coming out of the draft. And it was because he was a really good player already. Like he didn't need to develop a whole lot. So I do think the difference for me is that I do think he can hit the ground running. He's kind of shown it through training camp. You've heard all the positive buzz. So when Chris Godwin comes back, sure, there is a part of that where I don't think Godwin is going to be the same player as he was last year. But I do think Emeka Egbuka is going to be a really, really strong case to be the better of the two running alongside Mike Evans.
Let us know your thoughts on these top 40 specifically in the comments down below. Who do we have too high? Who do we have too low? If you want to go watch a running back rankings video, do the same thing. Please do. Go ahead.
Or it's just the perfect list, and that.
Or it's the perfect list. I mean, we won't put that in the title or anything, but it probably is just the perfect list, and you can come back to this and totally see how right it was come come year's end. No, we appreciate you all of our statted out projections on all these players from all three of us, not like a consensus stat, but like all three of us took the time, sat down, statted out these players, statted out these offenses. You can get that in our 2025 draft guide if you want an additional hand to helping out your fantasy football drafts this upcoming weekend. Full key insights on all 32 NFL teams as well. A nice little addition that we added this year. So you can check that out, fellasdraftguide.com, if you want to get your hands on that. Otherwise, you can follow our other socials as well. FFL is over on Twitter. The FFL is on Instagram. Fantasy Football Fellas on Facebook and TikTok. If you're just loyal YouTuber through and through, Fantasy Football Fellas shorts on the YouTube. Again, today, not wearing shorts. It's a nice athleisure
context.
Day.
Context is important.
Nice athleisure day. All right, wearing some nice breezy athletic dress pants today. Because everybody wants an update on what pants I'm wearing at the end of the episode. That's what I've just concluded. That's what the people want.
Let us know.
Cameron's like, I'm tired of the bit already. Ty, you at least are nice and laugh along. Cameron's just like, this is the dumbest bit in the world. We're never going to be taken seriously. Never. Maybe I don't want to be taken seriously.
He would just rather be talking about Cooper Kupp and Michael Pittman.
Yep. Totally. Yeah. Where are they? Gosh, are they inside your? Don't tell me they're inside your top 45 and Emeka Egbuka isn't.
I don't think so.
So Egbuka is his 45, Pittman's is 34, and Cooper Kupp is his 38.
Oh yeah, there.
Expose that fraud. What? What? What?
Hey, you just
that look.
You win some and you lose some, and Cameron just lost a few.
No, I didn't lose. I did that on purpose.
Oh man, hey, you know what? I respect standing on business, standing on your takes.
Mm-hmm.
Teach their own. Couldn't be me. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll have quarterback rankings coming tomorrow. We'll have wide receiver or tight end rankings, coming on Friday. So make sure you subscribe, turn on the notification bell so you know when those episodes drop right in time for your fantasy football drafts. We'll see you then. Deuces.
Deuces.